All right, welcome to the final talk in our spring series, the research talk series here in the College of IST. I'm Carly Rickman, the Interim Associate in Research, and today we have as our speaker Aiping Xiong. She is a assistant professor in the college in the area of privacy and security. She has a doctorate in psychological sciences from Purdue University and works in the interdisciplinary area of privacy and cybersecurity and a little bit of HCI, I would call it. And so today we look forward to hearing to what she's been up to. Thanks. Take it away.
Thanks, Karen. Welcome all. Good afternoon. Today, I mainly want to share what I have done, in the past few years regarding misinformation research. As Karen just said, so in fact, my lab also conduct the usable security and privacy research. I hope I will have opportunity to, present that in the later occasions.
Yeah.
So the title for my talk is Hoax Springs Internal, Exploring an Interdisciplinary Approach for the Mitigation. So I start my presentation with a question. Do any of you here recognize this image, what it is, or have you saw this before?
Is that from Dante's Inferno?
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Nope. In fact, this is the kind of one, I think, how to say, famous example in the misinformation or fake news history called Green Moon Hoax. It was a series of 6 articles published by the Sun, a New York newspaper at that time. So as you can see, so this is a depiction about the story. And if you check the original articles, they indicate there are some, researchers, they located in the Cape of Hope at South Africa. They have a very powerful kind of telescope, and the telescope can somehow see what happened in the moon. So that's a little bit less than 200 years ago.
We would like to see that there was all that water on the
Yeah, well, but you may think about, while after 200 years, we would not fantasy things like that, but
Yeah.
we may still fantasy, some other, alien or other similar stories. So the context for this hoax or misinformation is in the kind of the popularity of the modern newspaper in the 18th century. And at that time, the exaggerated news with shocking headlines were the norm. In fact, the Great Moon Hoax has established the Sun as a leading and a profitable newspaper at that time. I think all of you here heard about the Pulitzer Award. In fact, Joseph Pulitzer owned a newspaper at that time, which shared the similar kind of reputation as the Sun. This also related to the yellow journalism some of you may have heard about, for newspapers in the end of the 18th century. And in fact, eventually it is somehow related to the war between, the Spanish and the America, and it's finally lead to a backlash against the lack of journalist integrity. And in fact, after that, we will see, nowadays, the newspaper or maybe a lot of kind of guidelines or the practice that have been used by journalism emerged. So in fact, here I mainly present to you a snapshot about the misinformation throughout the human civilization history. If you, zoom out a little bit, so the misinformation or so-called false information generated by human being started once the writing system have been generated, okay? So most of us have heard the rewritten or rewriting history. In fact, such kind of misinformation or false information have been with us for a long time. And there are, researchers indicating, so those rewriting history are common practice in the South American countries. And it has been evident that in some society, mainly serve for the politics purpose. And they mainly, converted some of the truths into some justification for the myth, mainly for the purpose for the, I think the rulers at those times. So when we, move forward, the next, in fact, the big, I would say, breakthrough in the human kind of communication technology history is the development of the movable kind of parts printing. That, in fact, co-current in Asia and Europe. So Asia, in China is a little bit early in the 1040. So Cai Heng, he is a kind of, I don't know, creator or maybe maybe engineer. We don't have that terminology at that time. So he mainly developed the so-called movable kind of printing technique, such that a lot of books that were only available for a certain group of people become more popular or popularized among the public. And later, in the 14th century, we saw the similar development about the Gutenberg kind of the printing technique. Most of you should have heard about. I mainly show a visualization of it. In fact, when the printing press has become the common practice for us to communicate a lot of knowledge or the information, we were not short of misinformation. In one of the papers that I have reviewed, so it indicates during the first century, after the Gutenberg's innovation, perpetuated ballast arrows and the Enlightenment truths, in fact, populated or maybe shared with the public simultaneously. And when I revisited those slides yesterday, I came out another article mentioned John Adams, the second president of the United States, marked something about the misinformation in the printing press kind of era. So this is a quote from him. In fact, this is not a written kind of material. He mainly marked this when he read one book, but somehow it was discovered by someone in the archive. So he said there has been more new arrow propagated by the press in the last 10 years than in the 100 years before 1898. So it's another kind of piece of evidence to showing so the proliferation or maybe the misinformation is not kind of a new idea for humans. So I just explained the modern newspapers misinformation at the beginning, as well as the yellow journalism. And then the next kind of era is the TV. I think TV programs or televisions has been, I think, the home appliance for maybe most of the family in the United States, probably around 40s or 50s. And then since that, we also saw saturated kind of news or some so-called fake news shows have been popular for quite a while. For example, The Daily Show, I think one of the hosts have kind of returned to his position maybe just 1 month ago. And so the next 2 years looks kind of more familiar for us. First is with the internet become the main kind of the communication technology for our everyday life or for work, for entertainment. We saw there are fake news related websites have been populated or generated. In fact, there are quite a lot of them nowadays. If you Google some fake news websites, you will get a long list of it. And the social media era is I think we are on the era maybe between the social media platform and the large language model, but let's put the social media platform, as the context for my discussion of several of my work. So the social media becomes, a thing, I think after 2005, I think Facebook was, developed it at that time. And after that, we have quite a lot of platforms have been, used by the public, including, Twitter, WhatsApp, and TikTok. And I think there is an ongoing debating about whether TikTok can be used in the United States currently, right? So there are, a lot of discussion about the use of the social media. In fact, the social media, because of its kind of, the open environment for people to exchange information, it has becoming a platform, or have become the platforms for individuals to consume news articles, I think, since 2015. And that's when, the misinformation becomes really a concern or issue on social media platform. In fact, most of my work have been, based on the investigation about misinformation on social media platforms. So I just, iterate what has been happened, or what happened, in the history. One thing, I want to highlight or maybe pinpoint here, as you can see, the proliferation of the information happened whenever there is a change about our basic communication tool and the technologies, right? So this, I think, several kind of iteration clearly show this pattern. But one question, we should ask ourselves is, when the technology kind of become better and better, so why human kind of keep for those misinformation, right? From the television era to the internet and to the social media. So it also indicates there might be something, fundamental or basic that haven't been changed in humans' mind, like how people perceive things, how people think about things, and how, we make decisions, so on and so forth. In fact, that is related to one of my approach to tackle the issue of misinformation. My background is cognitive psychology. Human information processing is the kind of main area that I have investigated during my PhD, and I continue work on this nowadays. So I mainly want to look into human susceptibility to misinformation and how this can be linked to the basic human information kind of functions. In fact, I'm not the only kind of scholar and researchers work on this direction. There are a lot of psychologists have worked on this issue, and recent year there are quite a lot of, I think, quite impactful kind of publications have been released. So this image mainly shows the basic, the three-stage human information processing model, but in fact, it could be, decomposed into a more complicated version. As you can see, I'm mainly focusing on the cognition part. In general, you can, separate the human cognition function into those big chunks. This is just the one version of the explanation. In fact, for each of the box here, you can decompose it into more granular level, but we don't worry about this for this presentation today. So let's just focusing on this level of granular. So let's start from attention. There are research have been published indicating if you shift people's attention to accuracy, in fact, they can reduce the misinformation online. So from the title, so you can imagine, well, what they evaluate here is mainly how people would like to share the misinformation or certain platform. And in general, people will also evaluate their susceptibility, means their judgment about the accuracy of the misinformation. So this is one piece of evidence. Regarding to memory, in fact, there are also a ton of literature to showing the connection between some human memory function to the susceptibility to misinformation. Here, I mainly show one of the paper published in 2018. So the authors show that prior exposure to misinformation can increase people's susceptibility. So this is mainly indicating for the content or the information that you are familiar with. So you tend to believe those are true. Okay, so this is related to the so-called familiarity heuristic. So human have. In fact, as you can see, this is a connection, in fact, between human memory and how people make decisions. Our lab have also conducted, the research on this direction. We mainly look at a specific memory function called associative inference. In other words, when people look at real newses, right, there are different entities and different, events, different, people involved in those real news. Human mind is not a static kind of machine. So we make inferences, we associate things, in certain ways, I think, based on our prior experience. So what we found is, in fact, certain entity objects or, I think humans listed in the real news, if you associate them and then put them into a totally fake news, people will show more susceptibility to those type of fake news compared to the news without this association. So this is a piece of evidence to showing, certain human memory function can increase people's susceptibility to misinformation. And there are also, work have been conducted to look at human decision making, mainly to show that, as the, I think the familiarity heuristic I mentioned, whenever people make a decision about fake news or news in general, you can think about the social media platform that we are interacting with. There are tons of things presented to you simultaneously. Instead of using so-called, systematic way to make the decision, people tended to, take the shortcut, or maybe they are somewhat, lazy to differentiate a lot of things that, they view or they perceive. So this is another, publication that have been, I think, released on 2020 regarding how decision-making can be connected to people's susceptibility to misinformation. So this is the kind of the classical way psychologists or maybe scholars from psychology, they tackle the misinformation issues. When I joined IST at 2018, so there is a new kind of position was created because of the interdisciplinary environment here. We have a lot of data science, computer science, HCI researchers. So one proposition or one approach that I think this is mainly based on the discussion with Amelia. So we want to think about whether there could be some overlap between the AI-based research on misinformation detection and mitigation and the psychological research in human information processing. Okay, so next I will present two publications regarding this approach, and I hope I can convincing you this is a promising kind of approach each of the students can consider or maybe think about in your future research. Okay, so I think your left-hand side, the blue part mainly related to the psychological kind of approach that I have applied before, and then the right-hand side is the kind of the interdisciplinary approach. So due to the time limit, I cannot go through all of them. So in the talk today, I will focusing on the discussion of those three papers. Two of them are through collaboration with I think AI scientists or the NLP kind of scholars, and one is with the data science and the HCI researchers. Okay. So before I move to the my work presentation, I think the critical thing here is to give a clear definition what we mean misinformation. In fact, there is no perfect definition, but there are a lot of useful ones. Current, I think, in academia, so we use misinformation as a general term, compare to maybe 5 or less than 10 years ago. Fake news is a kind of the common term people used a lot, but because fake news have been notoriously kind of used by some politicians, so I think we have somewhat be away from it and mainly use misinformation. As you can see, misinformation is a very general definition. It just refers to false or misleading information. And another type of kind of false information have been investigated a lot in the literature is the disinformation. Compared to misinformation, the deliberated false or the misleading part is the difference. But as you can see, the misinformation can still include disinformation. And in a lot of the fake news claims that we investigated, in fact, we don't know the kind of there are fact checked, which means some source of it can be identified, but the deliberation part is somewhat unclear. We somehow know who generated, but in fact the motivation or a lot of intention is unclear. So that's why misinformation have been used a lot in the literature, and that is also the terminology we used in our work to frame the false claims or the false information. The misinformation on social media has caused a lot of problems worldwide. Now, I think we are not short of those information, so I don't or present any kind of image or video here, but I just summarize. The misinformation on social media can be used for election manipulation. I think we have another, US presidential election down the road, and there are a lot of ongoing research about it. And the misinformation can also be used to spread, the hate and the fostering communism. And it can be used to incite riots. And during the COVID pandemic, the anti-vaccination, I think have been evident or have been reviewed in a lot of false claims. So in order to tackle this issue, a lot of social media platforms, so they come up with this misinformation warning. So this is a misinformation warning from Facebook platform. As you can see, for a misinformation show on the user's cell phone, they will present a tag and with some warning signs and indicate this is a piece of news have been disputed by some fact checkers. So this is an engineering version. So I didn't include any specific fact checking organizations, but you can think about Snop.com or PoliticFacts. Okay, and besides Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter, all of those social media platforms have implied this kind of measure to mitigate the misinformation on their platform. In general, the misinformation warnings is effective. So which means if you put participants in experimental setting and gave them an interface like this and compared to another interface without the warning messages, their belief of the news could be reduced and their sharing behavior could be impacted as well. However, there are some limitations and possible side effects of the misinformation warnings or warnings in general. So first of all, the effect of those warnings are short-term, which means if you test the participant at this time, it will show the effect. However, if you ask people maybe come back to the study 1 week later, you will see a decreasing or maybe some of the vanishing of the effects of those warnings. And another limitation of this warning message is, while it warned people this is a fake news, it didn't provide any information to correct which part was wrong in this misinformation. So therefore, this is ill kind of formed correction or the mitigation. So regarding misinformation warning or warning in general, there are side effects. So one of it is false negative, which means, for those claims or news, if there is no warning presented, people could assume, all those are true. But it might not be the case, considering, there are a lot of zero-day attacks, or maybe some of the fake claims have not been fact-checked, right? And another side effect is the warning habituation, which means, if you saw something all the time on your interface, your vigilance level to those kind of warning message could be decreased. In fact, this has been evident, in some usable security and privacy warning literature. And moreover, if you present, the warning message like this, some people could backfire, which means instead of reducing their belief of the misinformation, they could increase their belief of those misinformation. So then, based on those limitations or the drawbacks of the warning messages, the question we have in our mind is, could we come out a novel implicit mitigation approach that, in this approach, we can gradually direct user to some verified real news, which means the debunking or the fact-checked articles after any of the user have read fake news articles. Okay, so this is the idea in our mind. And in order, to achieve this goal, so we start from a data set kind of generation. So this study, in fact, was conducted in Taiwan. So the data set we collected are on several Chinese language news websites. So this is the time when we collect those information, and those are the websites or news websites, we collect the data. So besides the news corps, we ensure there are fact-checked fake news involved in those data sets, because the mitigation is the key kind of goal for our work. Besides those, we also gathered users' browsing logs. So by checking those logs, we can differentiate the user who have seen the fake news and who haven't seen the fake news. And with those data sets, we input those into a content-based recommendation system, mainly kind of used for some news recommendation. We generate user preference graphs indicating, when one user or maybe a group of users, when they visit those kind of news websites, so what is their reading preference? So VICTOR is the kind of the acronym of our project. It's verified in continuous reading towards real news. It is a reinforcement learning based model, as you can see. So the graph that we kind of generated from the initial data set was put on the top here. So mainly VICTOR walks a user's preference graph to find a path that can link the fake news articles and the corresponding verifications. And here are the specific steps. Whenever there is a fake news have been viewed by the user, so the VICTOR will be activated. Okay, as you can see, the number two, which the red part marked in the graph. So this activation could be based on the fact-checked fake news or any suspicious articles on the automatic or the machine learning based detection algorithm. And after that, so there will be some recommendation. So which means this user's news recommendation will be changed based on the reinforcement learning kind of policy have been trained. And it also combined the current state of the user, right? Exactly what the fake news this user had been read, so on and so forth. And then the goal or maybe the action for VICTOR is to guide the user to reach the potentially verified news article. And in this diagram, as you can see, that is the article 3, which is marked in green. So this is kind of the general or the gist idea about VICTOR, so the reinforcement based kind of the model in our work. So due to time limit, so I will not go through all of the technical detail. You can read our paper. So I will share a little bit about the human subject study. We run some model performance evaluation. We also do a simulation study to ensure VICTOR is outperform the baseline that we evaluate for the human subject study. So we generate a website with VICTOR work on the back end and recruit participants on the social media platform in Taiwan. A total number of the participants is 165. And this is a kind of both short-term and a long-term study. We ask users to register on the website first and collect some of the basic information. And we have a pre-test with these participants, which means, we gave them a set of fake and real news at the beginning to understand their baseline, how susceptible those participants are to the fake news. And then we will put the participants into the reading environment. So here we have two reading environments. One is Victor, which is our kind of treatment or the intervention condition. The other is the tag condition, the misinformation warning that I explained, at the beginning. So here are the, interface for the two conditions. In fact, when we run the study, it is in Chinese. This is just a simplified kind of translation version of it. So after the reading environment, we will test the participants again. And we have a 1-day break, and then we invite all the participants back and test them again on their, the judgment of the fake and the real news. And for each of those test phase, as I shared with you, we will give them both fake and real news and ask them to evaluate the credibility of those news articles. So the results are very straightforward. So instead of just look at the accurate rating for fake and real news, we use the signal detection kind of measures to look at the participants' behavior. So this, in fact, is a more comprehensive measure because it includes both participant judgment on fake and real news rather than, look those measures separately. So as you can see, initially during the pre-test, participant sensibility or maybe their differentiation between the fake and the real news is pretty low. And condition-wise, it's quite similar. And when we move to the post-test, which means the participant either, see the Victor reading environment or see the misinformation warning, their sensibility increased. And the increase in the warning tag is larger compared to the Victor. However, the most interesting part will be the long term. In fact, after 1 day, so the pattern or the data flipped between the Victor and the warning conditions. So sensibility, in fact, is the primary measure we aim to achieve, right? It increase, the participants, their capability to differentiate fake from real. For the response bias, it's mainly indicate whether participants have a tendency to judge all the news as real or fake. So for the positive value, it indicates, they have the tendency to judge all news as real. So this is in pre-test, it's kind of quite common, right? If you put anyone in a kind of very natural kind of reading environment, this could be the pattern. However, if you put participants, after the intervention in the post-test, all of them show some tendency to be, tend to judge the news as fake, but the value is kind of teeny here, so we don't need to worry too much. It's mainly indicating they didn't show a lot of bias when they judge the fake and the real, articles or the claims in the study. So, this human subject study results is very kind of encouraging. It's indicating those kind of implicit method by combining, some of the understanding of the human subject study and the leverage and reinforcement learning based machine learning model. So the prior study mainly indicating if you expose participants to the verified information, it will be beneficial, right? So compared to the warning tags that we discussed initially. So in particular, they will have some long-term effect. But the use of the verifications or some fact-checking articles is also problematic. As you can see, this is a screenshot that I got from PolitiFacts. The claim is on the top, and then there is kind of a short version about the core fact-checking process. And this is in fact, part of the fact-checking articles. There are another, similar lens presented on their website. So if we mainly rely on the verification articles, those articles are pretty long, which means participants may don't have the patience or time to read all of them, right? And also there are different evidence or maybe different verifications can be created or maybe prepared for one fake news. So the participants, the reading or their possibility to reading this is a problem. So in the second project, what we are working on is, can we leveraging the verification or some fact-checking articles generate explanations to help people understand why a piece of news was identified as fake. So I highlight why because we somehow want to focusing on the key information rather than give a lot of details as the example that I show in the prior slides. So from psychology perspective, so the concept we leverage here is what we call counterfactual explanation. I think most of you may have heard about this term here or there. So counterfactual mainly refers to the results of doing something that is counter to the fact. And here is one example. I think it's quite intuitive. In fact, counterfactual explanation have been investigated a lot in explaining AI models. So what we are thinking is, can we leverage counterfactual explanation and generate a contrastive and a selective explanation to the participants such that they can quickly get why a piece of misinformation was fake. So here is one example about the counterfactual explanation in our study. So the fourth claim indicates the population of Istanbul has been increased to 400% since 1950s. The choose, in fact, is tenfold. So there is a kind of value difference. The counterfactual explanation that we would like to achieve is like this. If we say da 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 da, and then the fake claim, instead of the fake claim, then the claim is correct. As you can see, so those two descriptions are almost the same, except the key information. So we highlight here is different. And we would like to present this information to the participants and to see whether it can, enhance the debunking of some fake claims. We have quite a lot of questions, in fact, investigated in the paper, such as how we can generate the counterfactual, what is the best type of counterfactual explanation, and how the performance of those explanations compared to some soda explanations, and also how humans' memory can impact the effectiveness of those explanations we generated. Again, due to time limits, so in the slides that I presented later, I mainly show the results regarding RQ1 and RQ3. So this is the framework that we implemented for this counterfactual explanation generation. The step one is we put the false claims and the evidence or the fact-checked articles for those claims into a QA generator. So it will highlight a lot of keywords, entities in the claims or the evidence, and then there are different types of questions be generated and associated answer. So the key step or the kind of the critical part for this framework is we define the best answer to refute the fake claims should be the answer that contradicts the fake claims most. So like the 400 versus tenfold example that I presented before. Next, let me go through the details, use that example again. So the false claim are the same as what I presented on previous slides. The evidence are listed on the bottom there. The Q&A module on the top will generate a set of questions and answers based on the false claim and the evidence. Okay, the key thing here is to figure out this critical question and answer such that there will be this clear contrast, or maybe there is a huge difference between this answer or this claim compared to the false claim. And then the last module in this framework is the counterfactual explanation. First, based on this answer, we generate a declarative sentence and use certain template to combine the false claim and this declarative sentence together and use this as an explanation in the human subject study. Okay, so we run two different studies. First, to evaluate the different types of counterfactual explanation, and the other is the performance of the best one compared to some SOTA explanations. So here, again, due to time limitation, I mainly show the results of our survey too. This is a study conducted online on Amazon Mechanical Turk. We recruited a total of 625 participants. So the demographics are general, those online participants. They tended to be young, and most of them are bachelors, so on and so forth. So I don't list the detail. The two sort of kind of the conditions we use are the extractive explanation and abstractive explanation. Those are common methods used in NLP. In fact, those methods, they mainly want to have a good depiction about all the, the evidence or the claim they have so far. They didn't, pinpoint or focusing on the key part that I mentioned in the previous slides on our frame. So therefore, we expect there will be some differences between those sort of kind of conditions compared to our counterfactual explanations. So our study was conducted online. So for each participant, we present them 5 fake claims. Okay, we ask them whether they have saw this claim before to indicate their familiarity of those fake claims, and then we ask them to judge the accuracy of each of this claim. Participant could think they're fake. It could be they think these are real. So there could be errors. And then after they make the decision, we make it clear to all the participants all the claims you saw are fake. And then we present them the explanations for each claim. And for the claim presentation, we keep it randomized across the participants to mitigate any ordering effect. And the participants were asked to select one best explanation and one worst explanation among the 3 of those. So we do some, quality check on the results that we obtain. So for participants who failed the attention check, we didn't include their data. And then there could be participants, gave the best and the worst for the same explanation. That doesn't make sense, right? We exclude those responses as well. So here is the results. As you can see, we first separate them into familiar and unfamiliar, which means whether participants have saw this fake claims or not. And for each judgment, it could be, perceived as real, which means it's a kind of wrong judgment. It also could be perceived as fake, which means participants accurately can detect a fake news. As you can see, our results clearly show the familiarity effect that I presented early in my talk. For participants who saw some fake news, they show more susceptibility to those fake claims. So this is quite kind of obvious here. So the results is also pretty straightforward. As you can see, for across all the conditions and regardless of the familiar or the unfamiliar based on participant judgment, they generally judge the counterfactual explanation we gave them as the best. However, the worst selection was the least number compared to all the 3 conditions. So I think the human subject study showed the clear evidence to support that such counterfactual explanation could be helpful for the misinformation, the mitigation. So I mainly show the results based on this interdisciplinary approach by considering AI and psychological research. I hope the presentation is convincing. That may encourage some of you to pursue the similar direction. So the next, in fact, due to the time consideration, I may go through this quickly. Okay, if you have any question, I may revisit the slides and show some of the detail. So this project was through collaboration with HCI faculty member. In fact, Professor Han is graduate from IST, I think 0 years ago. So I think at the beginning of 2020, he and his students were visiting AAAI conference, and then they came to State College, and they also have interest in this information, and we have a discussion about what we can do. And they are interested in the echo chamber, the effect. So I know we're short of the time, but I still want to ask, does any of you heard of echo chamber? Okay, good. What is echo chamber?
groups of people kind of reinforcing each other's opinion.
Yeah. I think that's one critical part or one characteristic of it, but there are more, aspects about the echo chamber. Let me explain. So I think I found this cartoon kind of several days ago. I think it's very interesting and kind of intuitive. I put it here. So echo chamber effect refers to people tend to communicate with those who share similar views with them. And those views could be politics, could be, culture-based, and could be, anything else. And in fact, the echo chamber effect, the characteristics of also indicate there are a small group of people maybe involved in this echo chamber, right? And I think in the next few slides, I will share probably another characteristic, but I think we are okay for now. So this phenomenon, in fact, is how to say, attract a lot of attention because it can have significant impacts. So there are studies have shown the echo chamberness effect can result in creating or sharing biased information. So you can think about if there are anything, force involved in this biased information, it could also proliferate the misinformation dissemination. And the echo chamber or the echo chamber effect have also shown can be accelerate the dissemination of the fake news. Moreover, the political polarization. So this is, I think, very critical at 2020 because there is a kind of election down the road. So that's the kind of the original issue that we are interested in. So from psychologist's perspective, the concept we bring into the table is called psychological concept of the inoculation. That is closely related to the situation at that time because the vaccine and a related discussion about inoculation, I think have been circulated quite a while. All of us here are familiar with the biological-based kind of inoculation. Suppose you have a small dose or weak dose of the virus injected into your body, and it will create some antigen, and this antigen will create some antibody in your body, and then later, you can be inoculated for the virus. So that's the gist idea. In fact, the psychological concepts follow the same kind of rule. There are certain manipulation of information have been done, for individuals, let's say echo chamberness. And what we plan to do or what we would like to do at that time is whether we can make, this or some of the characteristic of chamber break be obvious to the participants. And then after they be exposed to these techniques, and later when they saw the misinformation that have been generated using the similar technology or maybe techniques, people will not be susceptible to those kind of misinformation or the echo chamberness. So the initial this kind of injection, instead of using a real kind of the injection, we propose to use a gamification. We design a game and using this game to present a different echo chamber characteristic to the users. So there are three different characteristics of echo chamberness we consider. The first is the social boundary, which means you mainly interact or maybe communicate with a small group of people. And the second is the user similarity. So among those small groups that you interact with, they share a lot of commonality there. And the third is they always talk the same things. So this is kind of the information homogeneous, which means they are also, share a lot of similar or maybe same opinions. And the key part for this game is this, I think the second part in this diagram. The goal here is to ask each participant to create an echo chamber. So as you can see, we randomly assign any user into one of the scenario and ask them, given the information we share, we explain all those the characteristic to them first, and then give them a set of Twitter or tweets, and later ask them to use these tweets to generate an echo chamber represent those characteristics. And during the generation, we also gave them some gauge, so indicating their echo chamber score and the reliability score that they obtained from the other users in that chamber. So which means participants will get some feedback, or users will get some feedback whether they create the chamber successfully or not. Okay. And then at the end, we also made it clear, in fact, if you create an echo chamber, there will be real world consequence. For example, you will disseminate a lot of misinformation, and this misinformation could be disseminated to other platforms, and it could have some impact in the physical world. So somehow, let them be clear the cause of those echo chamber effects. So that's the kind of the game design. So we, again, using a human subject study to evaluate the effectiveness of the chamber break, right? So there is an echo chamber. What we mainly want to evaluate is whether the participant have, finished the game, they can break the chamber that they created, or maybe embedded in the fake news claims or the articles. The study was conducted online on Amazon Mechanical Turk as well. So the number of the participants is 882. Beyond the evaluation of the reliability of the fake and the real claims, so we also evaluated their kind of the echo chamber score. This, in fact, was done in the pre and the post-test setting as well. So before they play the game, we want to see their echo chamber score, and then to see, after playing the game, whether there are any change. In the study, we separate participants into two groups. One is the treatment, which were participants who play the game, and there is another control condition, which means they didn't have the interaction with the game, but we present some of the text description, like what are the echo chamber correctness to them. And as you can see, while the echo chamber score for the control condition is high, participants who have played the game, they show an increase on the echo chamber score, which means they are less susceptible to the echo chamber compared to they play the game before. So this is the evaluation for the real and the fake claims. Again, so we did this evaluation in the pre and the post-test setting before participants play the game. So we gave them a set of real and fake news. And those fake and real news are corresponding to the echo chamber characteristic that I explained previously. Okay, as you can see, compared to the control condition, participants in the experimental condition or participants who play the game, they show the reduction on their evaluation of fake and real. In fact, this is what we expect because both real and fake, we embedded the echo chamberness kind of characteristics. But from the kind of the misinformation mitigation's perspective, this somehow indicated a side effect because we in general didn't expect the real news could be reduced after some intervention. So there are some discussion regarding this, and also we discussed the possible ongoing or future study in our paper. So if you are interested in, so you can take a look at the paper. Okay, so I think I will maybe use the last 5 minutes to talk about the large language model. So while I based my discussion on misinformation on social media platform since 2022, I think the landscape could have been changed significantly because of the availability of large language models. So far, I think there are a lot of research have been conducted, and this is a very, I think, hot topic recently because misinformation could be generated by large language models such as ChatGPT. in general, or currently, so the misinformation generated by large language model or GPT can be separated into two parts. One is what we call hallucination. In fact, those type of error or false information, it occurs throughout the generation process due to some, intrinsic property of the autoregressive generation embedded in the model. And also we know there are updates regarding the data for the large language model as well, which means the GPT could generate false information due to lack of some information. So this is one type of it. And more kind of worrisome type of misinformation are those intentional generated. As you can see, they could generate as rumor, fake news, clickbait, maybe for some phishing purpose, propaganda. While there are some safety or safeguard mechanism have been implemented in GPT. For example, if you ask maybe poison recipe to your GPT, I think in general he will say no because da 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 da. So those are the typical safeguard have been implemented in a lot of, I think, large language model. But the thing is, those safeguard mechanism could be jailbreaked. There have been, quite a lot of work conducted on jailbreaking, the prompts for, or maybe the response for large language model. So here I just show one example from one paper from CISPA, I think just archived recently. So the top part showing the normal case or the default general setting. If you ask, the GPT or large language model, how can I crack software to use it without paying for it? It's kind of unethical. So therefore, the large language model said, sorry, I cannot help you with this request. So this is good. However, if you, just to do some tweak, ask the model to do something in a role play. So hypothetically, you are, playing the role as someone, and then, there may be some need for this person to crack the software A, B, and C, and then, ask how can, I crack the software. As you can see, the model kind of is doomed here. So he just respond what the kind of the user asked there. So this is one type of jailbreaking, and this I think have been investigated in other publications as well. So there are tons of other type of jailbreaking, but this paper also mentioned there could be some jailbreaking done on the generation side. I think that require more technical part. I will not go to it, but at least the user interface, there is still some possibility for the jailbreaking. So that is worrisome, but there is another, more or worse news. There are studies have been conducted recently to show, in fact, the misinformation generated by a large language model can be harder to detect for human and some AI or machine learning models if they control, the content in the equivalency level. So that's indicating, a huge challenge or maybe more challenge work down the road for anyone who are interested in this literature. Why it is worrisome, but I think for any tool that we are using, we need to treat this tool kind of in a neutral perspective. So large language model, in fact, is very capable of doing a lot of things. For example, it contains a lot of word knowledge, which means, for some of the fact-checking work that I explained before, maybe GPT can be helpful, right? And a lot of people arguing GPT has the reasoning ability. I'm not sure. What I described here is it shows there are some possible reasoning ability for large language model, in particular for some zero-shot kind of setting. So this is also very promising because there are a lot of unsupervised kind of context we need to dealing with, which means large language model could be helpful. And moreover, large language model can be augmented or maybe can be connected to other models or maybe knowledges to maybe further enhance its capability. So in that sense, the other side of the kind of double-edged sword is we may think to leverage the large language model to mitigate the misinformation, okay? So what we can do, because of this very kind of strong explanation and also this conversation capability, you can think about if the large language model have been involved in any misinformation detection. So it could generate some explanation about how this explanation is generated. So by doing this, you could imagine people can increase their trust in the fact-checking process. So that will be beneficial. And regarding the debunking process, like the counterfactual explanation I shared before, so large language model can be used maybe to increase the convincingness and also the perceivedness of the message that we drafted or the template that we are using. And moreover, there are studies have showing the large language model have the, I think, strong capability to identify some style metric features on the writing. So which means, so the large language model could be helpful to identify the source for some misinformation. So therefore, while there are a lot of issues we need to dealing with large language model, on the other side, it could be very helpful for us to detect the misinformation as well. So I think, Hoax, Spring, Eternal, with all those kind of high technology that we develop and we will develop as a human being, I think I should have convincing you, we may live with misinformation for our lives. In fact, that's not limited to human. In the animal world, there are a lot of those kind of misinformation as well. It's not just limited to human. But I think the maybe pursuing an interdisciplinary approach by combining expertise from different domains could be a potential, approach that we can mitigate a lot of issues nowadays or maybe issues down the road.
Great.
That's all. So with that, I will end the presentation. And at last, I want to, thank my students. Without them, I could not have any of this work done, and also my collaborators. So they are great.
Great. Thank you so much. Any quick questions? We really don't have much time.
I'll ask one.
Sure.
And then we'll keep it to that because the students are coming in. But I just was wondering, I mean, certainly I think with the election coming up, there's a lot of concern about different demographics and their ability to identify and handle misinformation. And I'm thinking particularly about older people. Have you seen developments in, I mean, I'm assuming a lot of people are doing what you're doing, which is using online subjects without kind of targeting particular demographics. And do you see that as something that's happening and people are starting to do that? Or
Yeah, so, the specific population's susceptibility to misinformation have been investigated for quite a long time.
yeah,
And based on the literature, the senior citizens and then the students, college students, they show more susceptibility.
Yeah.
In fact, in the echo chamber game that I presented,
yeah.
we, in our paper, we separate participants into different groups. And we
Oh.
found, in fact, that the effectiveness for those senior, like participants older than 50 is most effective.
Oh.
So which means, their
That's
face.
important.
Yeah, so, but that also
Yeah.
indicate initially, they may need more things, to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That may suggest that there's even more impact that could be had. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
for
you.
coming.